Welcome to Invisible No More podcast, where we stand together as a beacon of hope for those who have served our country and faced unimaginable challenges. I am Shannon Huff, your guide through stories of strength, resilience, and healing. Our mission to empower women who have faced sexual assault in the military, find their voice, reclaim their power, and rebuild their lives. Join us as we share journeys of triumph over trauma, offer support, and shine a light on the path to restoration. Together, we are a Shield of Sisters. Welcome back to Shield of Sisters. This is episode 9. We're still talking with Bethany. We've had such a great conversation. We're glad you came back. We're just going to dive a little bit into stressors and triggers and how to manage them. You know, all too often we put things in boxes and don't realize our experiences, that things based on our experiences and traumas can come up in a lot of different ways. And you might not even realize it until after it happens.
It's the unexpected stressors that can really take over in the worst way or in the strongest way, and that can compromise us. It takes away our ability to respond instead of react. Mm-hmm. And I like the idea of responding instead of reacting. Reacting to me feels like it's more impulsive, like I'm trying to do this thing, and we might not have as much control as we could if we were thinking clearly through the situation. But the problem is we can't think clearly through a situation if we encounter a stressor, which I use interchangeably with trigger. I never know if someone has a history of gun violence. What I know about stressors is that I go from my baseline functionality and level of distress to something heightened. It's just a question of how high, how bad is the stressor. And I have had to do a great deal of work around myself in knowing what those stressors are so that I am better equipped to help myself get through that moment if one comes along and I'm not ready. I don't know that I'm perfect. I don't know that I ever will be. Mm-hmm. I don't know that that's a realistic expectation. But what I do know, and for me, loud noises will stop me, and it's going to take me a minute to recalibrate. When they happen to me, I have to stop what I'm doing. If I'm in a session and I work in an institution where there are door slams and there are reactions to the therapy that we are doing or to the boundaries I set, and in one instance, someone banged their hands on the table in front of me, and I was done being a therapist, and I was Bethany, who's been hurt in the past. Mm-hmm. And, had the door slam and the door locked behind her. And that's not a place in which I can show up healthy and provide any sort of therapeutic guidance. So at that point, the session ends. I can say that, but that's about it. And then I need to step back and take care of myself. What I've recognized to be most valuable is to bring my heart rate down. Mm-hmm. Our hearts are the organs that really compel the reaction to the trigger. And it's a reaction because we don't have control of our heart rate in that moment. It just skyrockets. So we have to limit oxygen to our heart. And in that way, it will beat slower. And that's why paced breathing or interval breathing can make such a difference.
Absolutely. I know when I'm getting keyed up, I run my fingers over a finger over my hand and breathe according to wherever I am, going up. Inhale, down, exhale.
And to make it even more effective, you might consider inhale on the way up, pause. So hold the breath in on the way, at the top, and then exhale on the way down, but then pause again and hold the breath out before you do the next round. So at each point, whether high or low, you are holding the breath out so that your heart doesn't have that oxygen to use again right away.
Thank you. We always start out our retreats, our first session, and I kind of like, okay, guys, we're going to, ladies, we're going to do a little breathing exercise just to kind of get us in a good space and, kind of think about what we're getting ready to go through. And we always have all kinds of sensory stuff around, sensory putty. We have the calm strips, because I know what helps me. And, I'm always trying to find as many ways as possible for our retreats to be therapeutic and not, I mean, they're always emotional, they're always emotional, but not so triggering, not so stressing that they can't enjoy their time. Mm-hmm. So, getting to know other women who've been through similar circumstances. And, I just find myself, always looking for ways to come down off those triggers. And used to, I would go eat. I would binge. Mm-hmm. I was diagnosed with a binge eating disorder, and had never really put a name to it. Had just known I get upset, I leave the house, I end up in a drive-through, and I sit out in the parking lot and eat it, and then throw all the papers away so nobody knows. Mm-hmm. No matter what it was, I would eat. And I could never quite put a thing to that, so now that I've done so many different therapies and like research, I found such healthier ways to bring myself down. Because, when I would eat, then I would just have another reaction, which is self-loathing. Mm-hmm. And, oh my gosh, here you are, you're unhealthy, you're stupid, you're fat, you're ugly, so I find those ways we've come to now that are so sensory that we finally realize that those are so helpful. And it's healthy to say, hey, you know what, I got to step away right now and come down off those so you don't do something that's sometimes long-term effects,
One of the things that we don't realize, we're in the throes of a traumatic response. And I really dislike the term PTSD because it incorporates disorder. Yeah. So I also try to be diligent about noting it as a response. When we're in it, we don't want to feel. And so one of those neural pathways right at the beginning is let me do something where I don't feel the effects of what just happened. I'm going to do something, a behavior, and there's usually a lot of denial around the behavior because it's a protective measure. So I'm going to protect myself by doing X, and I don't want to feel Y. A foundational principle of trauma recovery is connecting with the body. It is the opposite of numbing. Because many of the behaviors that we employ to get through a traumatic response and our reactions to it are numbing in nature. And those are really effective, unfortunately, at keeping us from ourselves and keeping us from the help that we need to move forward. And many, many times, if we are eating, if we are drinking, if we are using substances, if we are sitting in front of the television until we can't think or feel anymore, it is in an effort to protect, but it's a really damaging way to protect. It keeps us from ourselves.
Absolutely.
That's why trauma recovery counseling can be so challenging at the forefront, because I sit down with someone and I talk to them about what's needed, and that to connect with themselves is the expectation toward recovery and not to be afraid of it. And then there's like a, the stiff arm comes out again. A stiff arm is my first and best indicator that someone has a post-traumatic stress response.
Absolutely. And those arms can be pretty strong.
Isolation is very prevalent in people who have gone through traumatic experiences.
And I find the more I talk about it, the more I tell my story, one, the less ashamed I am because I did nothing wrong. But two, my response to it is less. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's still times I think about what happened to me. And one of my biggest times is when I'm in a doctor's office and they pull out needles because I had to get tested so often for everything. The other day I was at the VA and they were giving me a shot, and my doctor, she's so phenomenal. She literally sat there and held me while the nurse gave me a shot. And she's like, I acknowledge this. It's like, but that's like one of my last things left, is that's one of my, but I'm so thrilled that I'm at a point where it's not as hard. I can do it without breaking down, telling my story and understanding that it can only help others to know that they're not alone, that they don't have to be invisible. They don't have to be silent. One of our previous podcasts, episode 2, Nicole kept saying, how alone she felt, how how hard it was to identify as a veteran, because it was just, she didn't want to remember it anymore because it was not an easy time.
And these are some of the layers that need to be pulled back a little bit so that we can better examine ourselves. And a layer that does need to change in terms of our identification is from victim to survivor.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the numbing behaviors that can lead to isolation and lead to inability to regulate our emotions, tolerate distress. So when we have these layers, victim changing to survivor over time, it means also that we have to reconceive of ourselves as a survivor and not a victim. So it's not just the behaviors that have to change, but it's also, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is who I can be. And sometimes we keep ourselves from this because we don't think that we are worthy or deserving of being a survivor versus a victim. That is oftentimes the most exhausting for a person and a provider to wade through. But the important thing is to wade through it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we like to work on is not only surviving, but thriving. You know, I survived for a long time. Mm-hmm. I like on the outside, you know, if you saw my resume and all this, it was great. Everything was great. But the inside was just still victim. Mm-hmm. And so when I decided to put in all the work and all the hours and really do it, the thriving just happened. You know, I still have my moments. I still have my things. But again, you know, it's the work. You got to put in work, and you got to talk to people, because you definitely can't do it alone. You definitely, it's impossible.
You know, I have seen people who have been through traumatic experiences and said, I don't need counseling and it doesn't bother me. And on the bell curve, that's possible, but I don't know that to be sustainable. Mm-hmm. And maybe this is someone who doesn't need counseling, but I bet you their personal relationships are not especially healthy.
Right.
One of the ways that I've moved forward through what happened to me at different times, and primarily through the military experiences, was I don't want to remember the person who hurt me. And so in large part, I have told myself and also told others that your ability to keep moving forward, literally keep walking without breaking stride, without, you know, turning and defending and protecting, without becoming really emotionally upset, is going to be a great indicator that you have made progress, because this is not something that ruffles you anymore. And to myself, I think that's something that happened to me, and I can dignify myself in that moment. But the individuals who hurt me are not important enough to remember. I have so much in my life now that is utterly beautiful that compels me. I'm not kept in the past nearly as much because I'm able to orient on the present with awareness. It really has brought me out of the shell that I thought I was protecting myself by, and the connectedness I have now with myself and others is the turning point. And it's pretty remarkable to experience, looking back at how I was and now how I am, which is more in line with how I've wanted to be.
It's beautiful. Not an easy path, I'm sure, to get there, but doable.
No. Doable. It is, you know, a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of heavy emotional lifting, sets and reps every day. You wake up and you decide that I'm going to move through the day, and you choose positivity. You choose to encounter the feeling, the stressor, yourself, myself, with bravery. Mm-hmm. And my ability to choose has also been a pillar for me in my own recovery, in a way that I also motivate others. You get to choose now.
Absolutely. And, you know, women who've served in the military are already brave because they raised their hand and
with certainty
went to boot camp and put on the uniform. So it's not impossible to come back from military sexual trauma, from any of the other traumas that can happen while you serve. You know, one of the big things that we've started talking about now is moral injury. And MST is a moral injury. And there's a lot of research going into it and thoughts around it, because it's not a physical injury, but it's an injury that someone has done to you that is such a betrayal you just can't fathom. You know, there's so much to that moral injury. And
it takes away our sense of belonging.
yes.
It takes away our sense of community. It takes away our sense of safety in us.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamental sense. We have signed on to this. We have agreed to this. We believe in the mission and in our brothers and sisters to protect us.
Yeah.
And that's not what happened.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That is an indelible mark. And it takes a lot of time and energy to move past if we're willing.
Mm-hmm. And one of the ways is to come to a retreat and work with Shield of Sisters and get a battle angel and talk to Bethany, because you're just amazing. I just love sitting here talking to you. I think we probably could go in 4 or 5 more episodes. Joe's like, no, we're not doing that.
Why not?
So if you could give a tip for someone who is having a stressor or a trigger, whatever you want to call it, what is one tip you could give someone listening?
This may sound counterintuitive, but don't isolate. You get to be with others. You don't have to be alone. You don't have to avoid. And it's not as though that the expectation is for you to say all there is to say about what happened to you and how you feel. Sometimes that doesn't help in the moment, but seek company in someone you trust, in someone who can hold that space for you. A lot of times we retreat into ourselves and we convince ourselves that when we're alone, we're safe. That was something I believed for a very long time. And I'm learning now that to be among others, to reestablish my safety in belonging, in community, in my family is essential. In the event you encounter a stressor, try not to push others away and hide away yourself. Do the opposite.
I don't think I could add anything to that. Again, thank you for being part of Shield of Sisters.
It's a pleasure.
You're such a beautiful addition to what we do. Looking forward to a longer relationship and a partnership as we go through
definitely
our growth and our different things we're doing. Thank you for sharing today. I know it's not easy. It's not an easy topic. If you're out there listening and you're having problems with self-isolation or any things like binge eating or all of the different things you can do when you're experiencing stressors or triggers, or you haven't gotten any help, there's help out there. There's things you can do. It's not just counseling. It's not just talking all the time. There's so many different ways you can get help. And we just encourage you to reach out to Shield of Sisters, to any of the other organizations that are out there, to the Veterans Administration. The VA has so many different programs out there now. If you aren't comfortable going to the VA, there's help, even if it's, just reaching out to a friend and saying, I just need help. So thank you for joining us on this episode, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. And again, this is Shield of Sisters, and we appreciate you being with us. Thank you to all the members of Shield of Sisters Founder Circle. Superbio, we appreciate your continued support. If you are interested in joining our Founder Circle, please visit our website at www.shieldofsisters.org or call Shannon at 608-344-0210.